Welcome to Aging in Place, Accessible Friendly Residential Architecture. I am Rand Selner with Home Architects. My firm designs custom homes across the United States, and we do work overseas as well. This is a presentation that we made to the National Association of Home Builders at their request at their National Summit meeting in Asheville, North Carolina in September of 2016. We started preparing this presentation going through the administrative sections of ANSI A117.1, which is the American National Standards Institute and is the main graphic explanation of ADA requirements, Americans with Disabilities Act, and explaining why you don't have to worry about it in a single family residence. The use of the ANSI standards is completely voluntary. However, the bottom line about ADA and ANSI is whether or not your local and state authority having jurisdiction has legally adopted a law demanding that you design and build a single-family home in compliance with them. We spent a day going through the HUD and FHA requirements, Housing and Urban Development and Fair Housing Act, accessible Type A, Type B, and Type C types of housing. However, things kept getting very involved. And in the end, these kinds of requirements will almost always apply to mainly urban multifamily housing or possibly motels, hotels, and possibly housing developments consisting over 20 units. Although in condominiums, it could be only over 4 units. So you need to be very careful if you're doing those kinds of projects. Therefore, we're glossing over this in this presentation because we're focused here today on single family residences. We're not here today to review the ADA and ANSI requirements and whether or not this pertains to you. If you are a general contractor or an architect of custom single-family residences on separate lots in suburban and country locations, the chances are probably 99% that these requirements will likely not pertain to you and your projects. That being said, we always encourage every architect and every general contractor to always inquire of their authority having jurisdiction what codes apply to each particular project. You can never tell when some jurisdiction might pass laws that would require compliance with these more demanding requirements. However, the National Association of Home Builders and other contractor groups have powerful lobbies which will likely thwart such efforts except in inner city locations and for larger scale multifamily projects involving dozens or hundreds of units. And such political resistance by contractors is for good cause. They or their clients have to be able to sell what they build, and if they have units that appear over-institutionalized, this could result in economic loss that might not be recoverable. So now what? How do we make single-family residences more accessible friendly if we're not going to make them comply with ADA or ANSI requirements where we're not required to do so? That brings us to things that my firm as an architect can design and that your companies as contractors can build that won't be much more, if any, more expensive than normal construction and not be perceived as institutional. How is this done? First of all, this is what brings us into the realm of accessible friendly residential architecture as opposed to accessible compliant design. We are in no way, shape, or form implying that creating accessible friendly architecture is in any way or in compliance with ADA or ANSI. Friendly is not in compliance. However, what's the option? What is largely happening today, which is pretty much nothing? In today's single-family residence, if it's not required by law and if the client didn't demand it, it usually isn't provided, which ignores an entire sector of the market, including the clients who ask for it, especially as they age. Because as people age, they become more infirm and some end up in wheelchairs or using walkers. And if their house hasn't incorporated at least some accessible friendly features, they may find themselves no longer being able to live in their wonderful house that they at one time enjoyed and be forced to move to an institutional group home that destroys their sense of independence and robs them of their dignity. Where would you prefer to end your life in your final years and months on this earth? In the home you love, surrounded by your loved ones, or in some cold clinic surrounded by strangers and other old people crying for help while they wait to die? Sounds cruel, but this happens every day all over America and the rest of the world. I've lost both my parents, so I know what I'm talking about. My mother, at least, was able to live longer in a home she enjoyed before we had to move her into an institution nearer to the end, where she needed constant assistance. When people come to my firm and tell me, I want you to design a house for me and my loved ones where we can live and die, they mean they really want the house to not limit that option. If we can design and you can build homes of integrity with doorways, thresholds, and other features that don't cost much, if anything, more than usual, why not? Especially if it allows our clients, the people who are providing us with our livelihoods, the ability to live the rest of their days in the comfort with which we have provided them. What can we do? Type A features, lever door hardware. Yes, we can do that. Turning radii and diameters. Well, where possible. Lower kitchen counters and bath vanities. That's going to be a little bit harder to do. Lower shelving, certainly, along with higher standard shelves as well. Accessible thresholds everywhere. I don't think it's going to be possible everywhere. Type B features, built-in blocking for future grab bars. That's easy to do, sure. Parallel approach at sinks, appliances, bathroom counters. Possibly. Removable base cabinets. Maybe to the extent that any cabinetry is removable. Type C features. Visitation units with milder requirements. However, there are also issues about exterior pavement slopes being 1 in 20 that might be difficult to deal with in some situations, particularly on sloping sites for custom single-family residences, particularly where my firm designs a lot of its homes, which is in mountainous regions. Now let's forget about type A, B, or C units. Let's just think about things that make sense when designing and building any single-family residence that could be done without making things much, if any, more expensive, but still improving accessibility and livability for the rest of the homeowners' lives. What can we do? Does this mean that you ignore accessible issues? No, in fact, my firm has renovated a 1981 house in the country near Glenville, outside of Cashiers, North Carolina, to accommodate a quadriplegic client of ours who moves around in a wheelchair. This 27-year-old man in the wheelchair is a courageous guy who picks up speed, then flies his wheelchair through some of the doorways so he can get through the door and to the other side despite about a 4-inch vertical step down. Then he crashes to the deck on the other side, skidding to a halt before almost tipping over. We're obviously going to correct that with landings and ramps, along with many other features. But this is the choice of my firm and that of our client, not of the local authority having jurisdiction, which in this case is Jackson County, North Carolina, who has no provisions for mandating ADA or ANSI requirements on single-family homes in most typical suburban or country locations, nor should they. So they're doing what most counties do. Nothing wrong with that. Here's a prudent suggestion. Suggest that you always ask the authority having jurisdiction what codes they enforce for your single-family residence project. You should usually hear IRC, International Residential Code, and IECC, International Energy Conservation Code, probably the 2015, 2012, or 2009 editions, and I understand that they're working on the 2018, which may be out in another year or two. If you ever hear anything about ADA or ANSI 117.1, get a copy of that mandate in writing. That would be very unusual for a single-family residence. Home Architects, my company, has 13 suggestions to successfully employ that will make your custom homes more accessible friendly. 1. Doorways. Make doorways wider, 36 inches wherever possible, and even pairs of 24-inch doors equaling 48 inches. This gives a feeling of grander width when entering and leaving a room, which could translate into perceived increased value. Increased cost is negligible, and if you're a developer or a contractor that's building a home for resale, this might help you sell your home more readily because it feels nicer. 2. Hallways and open spaces. Eliminate hallways wherever possible using the open spaces inherent in the plan for general circulation. This translates into greater efficiency, larger spaces, and less wasted pure circulation, resulting in less wasted dollars spent on pure circulation and better mobility due to less confined space in the house. The cost is actually less than using conventional hallways because you have less partitions. If you do have to have hallways, try for about a 48-inch width, or at least perhaps 42 inches, with some larger space like 60 inches at the ends for maneuvering, so someone in a wheelchair won't be trapped. 3. Door hardware. Absolutely no increase in cost to use lever handles like this on all doors. This, however, makes a huge difference to Frank, the quadriplegic, who does not have the use of his hands and has to use his forearms to open doors. A round doorknob won't work for accessible, challenged people like this. 4. Master shower floor. Small increase in cost. Lower the floor framing under the master shower 3 inches so your tile setter's mud bed there can slope down and into the shower from the main room with no real need for any threshold at the shower entrance, allowing for easy wheelchair access into that shower. Zero institutional perception, and the water is successfully taken care of. 5. Garage to house access. There's nothing in the code that requires this situation, with the garage slab much lower, or in some odd cases higher than the interior floor level. However, this becomes a major impediment to someone in a wheelchair or in crutches or other ambulatory challenged movement. What can we do? By setting your garage rear and side perimeter slab edges at the same level as the main house entrance to the garage, or within 3/4 of an inch, or ½ inch is even better, you can greatly facilitate wheelchair access in both directions. This probably costs less to do it this way, the way my firm does it, because you don't have steps to worry about. 6. Appliances. Install front control appliances. This allows everyone to control the appliances from the point closest to the access aisle. This is safer, not reaching across a hot surface, boiling pots, or open flames. There should be no difference in cost. It's just a selection on what type of appliance. 7. Front doors. Probably not too much we can do here because even if we do have a minimal door threshold step up, the chances are that the entire house is still going to be set up at least 3 steps to get it far enough above the ground to avoid flooding, rotted framing and siding, and to allow for a usable crawl space. However, we endeavor for a 3/4 inch to 1/2 inch threshold with chamfers wherever possible. 8. Rear doors. We can do something here. We can set up the main floor sheathing at about the same level as the sloping rear decking. This means the finished wood floor is up only about 3/4 inch from the rear deck, although the threshold of a sliding glass door probably jacks that up a little bit more, but it doesn't have to be much more than that. Our client Frank would have no trouble at all going through that without endangering himself. 9. Shelves, counters, and cabinets. Sure, every home can have lower shelves and base cabinets in addition to higher cabinets and higher shelves, and lower pull-out cabinet drawers has found preference among our buyers. These are some 3-dimensional imagery from one of our projects that we recently designed. You're probably not going to want to do a counter lower than 36 inches, but base cabinet like this with a drawer base cabinet is found a lot of preference. And anybody can open that, including somebody in a wheelchair, and pull the contents out easily and use and then push it back in. But grooming vanities in bathrooms can be about 30 inches in height, like this one on the right side here. You can just see a little bit of the corner of it. This may or may not conflict with armrests of wheelchairs for front approach, but might work well for a parallel counter approach. A lower mirror at the grooming counter works for anyone in a seated position on a normal chair or in a wheelchair. There's no cost increase to do this. 10. Space. We've never met a client who ever told us, make this space more cramped. We don't want to feel that this room is spacious. I don't think contractors or architects have ever heard any client say that. If there are ways to allow for a 60-inch turning diameter within the house, that's a magic number for someone in a wheelchair. 11. Blocking. Very small increase in cost. Provide flat-wise 2x6s inside walls between studs. At ANSI 117.1, critical centerline heights in showers, around tubs and toilets, and in master suites and in secondary bathrooms where the client believes that there may be a future need. Architects will know these heights and links. We provide this in our specifications so that the contractor knows exactly where to put these. 12. Handrails. There should be no increase in cost. Architects and contractors are supposed to comply with code, specifically the International Residential Code. This requires graspable handrails in addition to guardrails. Graspable in terms of round handrails equates to 1 1/4 to 2 inches in diameter with a few options. Not a 2x4 though, and not a 2x6, as you see here and as is commonly found in most homes. These are guardrails. There's no handrails here at all. And that's a violation of code right here. If a person trips on a stair and they can't grasp a handrail, they can fall and be injured. We actually provide a specification detail here in our project document so that everybody understands how to do this correctly. 13. Faucets. Brizo, which is a subsidiary of Delta and also American Standard, and other manufacturers now make some faucets that turn off and on by simply touching the faucet stalk like you see here, as well as by turning a handle. This works well for people without functioning hands, such as our quadriplegic client. Cost, yes, a little bit more. This has been Aging in Place, Accessible Friendly Residential Architecture. If our firm, Home Architects, can design a project for you, please let us know at the information shown here on the screen.